Hi, I'm Jerri Heid, Youth Services Librarian at the Ames Public Library. Welcome to Well Read, a program about a little bit of this and a little bit of that at your Ames Public Library. Typically we talk about things that are going on at the library. This time we're not. We're going to talk about books. Books from 2012, the best books of our APLY staff that we have chosen to tell you all about. The first one I'd like to share with you is, in the second of our four-part series, is the fantastic books of Mr. Morris Lesmore. Mr. Morris Lesmore loved books. He loved to read books. He loved stories. He wanted to write a book. Unfortunately, there was a horrible storm that happened at his house or in his property where he lived, and tornadoes came, and it was a horrible storm, much like the Wizard of Oz, or perhaps Katrina, since that's where the author does live, is down in Louisiana. Poor Morris, his life was ruined. All the pages were gone of the books, the words and letters were coming off the pages, but he kept going. And one day, a woman with a balloon-like bouquet of books came flying by and threw a book, or led him to a library-looking place and gave him a book. It was Humpty Dumpty, his favorite book. And Morris Lesmore went into this library-like building and started writing his book, and was able to write and listen to the stories that were told in his library. And that is where I'd like to leave us here today, to let us talk about those stories that we hear in the library, the best of 2012. Today I have with us is Bree and Anastasia and TANVI, who are going to help us with our easy-to-read books, our juvenile fiction, and some juvenile nonfiction as well. So let's take us into that next level of our books in our easy-to-read books that we have for our beginner readers. Who would like to start? Let's go for a drive, TANVI.
All right. So Let's Go for a Drive by Mo Willems is the newest Elephant and Piggy book. He's got, I don't know, like 1,000 of them. I'm not sure how many there are. But they're about a set of very mismatched friends. There's Piggy, who's sort of happy-go-lucky and takes things as they come. And then there's Elephant, who is much more cautious and careful. Sort of in the vein of Frog and Toad kind of friendship. So in this book, they decide that they are going to go for a drive. That's their big adventure for the day, going for a drive. So they're very excited. If you can see in this picture, they look a little, I don't know, crazy. Like they're just super excited. The very cool thing about Mo Willems is that he uses so few words to create such fun and exciting stories, which I think is a massive talent, because there's a lot of easy to read books that focus more on the vocabulary and less on the story, and he actually has both. And his stories always have a lot of repetition, which, as we know, is wonderful for kids building their vocabulary and their reading confidence. But the repetition in these books is also very rhythmic, so it's fun to say. So they're saying, drive, drive, drivey, drive, drive. Like, what kid isn't going to want to say that over and over again? So they decide they're going to go on this drive, but then Gerald, the elephant, he says, wait, we are forgetting something. We need a plan. And then he goes through the whole book saying all of these things that they have forgotten that they need to take. So they need to take a map. And he says, get that map. And then Piggy gets the map, and then they go on until Gerald realizes, we have all of this stuff, but we don't have a car. So how are we going to take this wonderful driving adventure without a car? And I'm not going to tell you what they decide, but it's very, very fun, and it's very cool. And it's kind of a nice surprise ending. And it's definitely an exciting book for kids. And speaking of mismatched friendships, we have Rabbit and Robot, The Sleepover by C.C. Bell. And these are both award winners. What was it? The Geisel Award.
Yes. They were honors.
Honors, yep. So who could be more mismatched than a rabbit and a robot? So Rabbit and Robot are having this sleepover. And there's short little chapters. Each chapter chronicles something that Rabbit wants the two of them to do together. So chapter 1, he wants to make a pizza. And his list is actually here. Pizza, watch TV, play Go Fish, and go to bed. The problem here is that Robot doesn't necessarily want to do everything exactly the way that Rabbit wants to do things. And I think that a lot of children can probably relate to that, because I know that when I was a kid, I always wanted to do things my way. And I had certain expectations for how things should go. And if they didn't go that way, then I could get kind of upset. So this is a great story about going with the flow and learning that friendship is about a give and take. So when Rabbit wants to eat pizza, and he says, let's put carrots and peas and lettuce, and Robot's like, but I don't eat carrots and peas and all of that. I eat nuts and bolts and screws. Well, where is he going to find nuts and bolts and screws to put on his pizza? He actually takes them out of Rabbit's tables and chairs, which is, yes. So, and Rabbit gets a little bit upset, and he says, well, you know, now we can't have this pizza because we're going to have a table and chairs. But Robot's like, but we have a blanket. So Rabbit learns to improvise. He learns that, you know, he can have fun doing things in a little bit of different way. So this story is great because it's a short chapter book, but it's got a lot of themes I think that children can really relate to.
And both of those do,
yes,
as far
both
as
of them
friendships
do.
are, and nice lesson learning type of things that how you can share and well, and I don't want to tell the end of the other story, so we won't go on with that. But there's always good things that you can you think through things and problem solve. Yeah. There we go. That
and
will not tell the story.
With, you know, maybe people who aren't quite like you.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
On that note, the Fly Guy series has been around for a while, and this is one from this year, Ride, Fly Guy, Ride by Ted Arnold. And the basic premise of the Fly Guy series is that there's a boy whose name is Buzz, and he meets a fly who says Buzz, and he said, oh, you have my same name. And so it's just the adventures of this boy and his fly. And what's great about it is they feel a little bit like graphic novels because there's a lot of large-scale illustrations and not as much words. But there's definitely that controlled vocabulary that beginning readers are going to have success with. And in this one, a very exciting story. Fly Guy gets stuck in a car and then gets dumped in a truck, and he may eventually end up on a rocket by the end. So he has quite a ride, and I really was kind of on the edge of my seat the whole time I was reading this, trying to find out what was going to happen to little Fly Guy. So definitely great adventure, great pictures, great for our earliest readers.
A page turner.
It really was. Yeah.
Another great early reader, people are always asking us for those, like beginning things. My kid is just learning to read. I need to introduce these things. We always send them to the Bob books. The Bob books are great. They're just introducing each of those little phonemes to them and stuff like that. And Bob books have actually come out with like full-length stories now instead of the little books. And so this year, and they're absolutely wonderful. Jack and Anne, who I'm not confusing with Jack and Annie from the Magic Tree House, but Jack and Anne, they have lots of adventures. The artwork very much follows what the Bob is typical for. Lots of basic shapes. You see her hair is in triangles and stuff like that. To kind of catch those. But Jack and Anne in this one, Outdoor Adventures, they go with their dad out on an outdoor adventure. They go hiking down a path, and then they jump over the stream, and they have a picnic outside and stuff, and then they come home, and the next day they want to do it again. But, you know, life is busy, they can't do it, so they create their own outdoor adventure in their front yard. And they walk down their path, which is their front sidewalk, and they get the hose out and put some water across it, and they jump over like the stream, and they have a picnic outside and stuff. And so very cute little tales, but very much what the Bob books are known for is introducing that that elementary language to the kids. Lots of repetition, lots of easy words and stuff for those beginning readers and what they need. So bright colors, fun little adventures, but a good addition to the introduction into reading.
You talked about simple words, and but I think your next selection has some fancy words.
Yes, yes. So taking the next step up into reading, we jump from the beginning reader into that more independent reader, ready for some chapters and stuff like that. Fancy Nancy is a favorite in the picture book age group, into the easy to read age, and now they have early chapter books. Jane O'Connor has jumped that gap and expanded the Fancy Nancy. This is Nancy Clancy, Super Sleuth, book number 1. Book 2 has just recently come out. Will be a series, which is very fun, but Nancy's just a little bit older in school than in the easy to reads. These are really great because they do have lots of illustrations that go along with, from the same illustrators of the book and the ETRs, which is great. She wants to be Nancy Drew. I mean, come on, who doesn't want to be Nancy Drew?
Yes.
Really?
Every girl dreams of that.
Especially when your name is Nancy.
Yeah.
I mean, come on. And so her and her best friend Bree have this headquarters outside. I know, right?
Is that why
a
you
little partial
chose
to
this
me
book?
here? Yep. They have a headquarters outside, and they have their trench coats, and they have, which are fancy names for detective coats. Oh. Yes, for raincoats and stuff. And so it's a lot of the same things that you get in the picture books and the ETRs. Lots of vocabulary for what they like to do, to be a detective and investigate. And there's actually a couple mysteries that just interweave through it. Something goes missing in one of their classrooms, and then Nancy overhears her friend saying something and it doesn't make sense, so she's investigating, and they all kind of, like, when she solves one, it kind of leads her to solve the others. It's very fun, very good introductory book into mysteries, because it's not totally hard to figure out what the mystery is going to be, which is good for kids because then they can follow along and try to guess it themselves. Another really fun one is her and Bree have a secret code that they communicate back and forth. So on page 20, here's the code and the key to the code, and then later on, as you get the messages from each other, you can go back and decode it yourself and figure out what they say, which is very cool to get the reader involved in it. So another fun early reader, early chapter book is the Daisy Dawson series. This is the 5th book in the series, which I can't believe there's that many. They're so cute. Yes. Yeah, they've just recently come out. But in one of the previous books, Daisy gets a little butterfly kiss when she's out and about on her eyelashes, and all of a sudden she can hear and talk to the animals that are around her, which is pretty magical because nobody else can, and the animals love this and she loves it as well. And in this book, Daisy Dawson is on the farm, and as many kids nowadays will pick up on and realize, there's a drought going on and there's no rain, and which means there's no pond for the ducks to swim on, and it's really hot and they just want a break, and these animals are complaining and saying, Daisy, you have to help us, we need this water, we need this, our pond back, we need rain. And so she goes through everything that she can possibly think of to get the pond back, including going to the river and having the voles come out and soak up all the water and taking them over to where their pond should be and wringing them out to try to get the water. And just a fun, quirky, cute little book. There are lots of little one-liners in here of situations that you wouldn't ever think of these animals are going to say, but it really gives each different, the ducks and the cows and stuff, they each have their own personalities and their own family groupings and stuff like that, which are really cute. So a good one for the early chapter ones if you like animals and stuff like that. Definitely a good choice.
And I think you've got a couple more that we probably should talk about because all the rest of ours is a little bit higher level.
Sure. A couple of the early chapters that we have too, we'll go on briefly. Another Bink and Golly. Going to be a series now. Absolutely love it for that introductory reader. This one is 2 for 1. Another friendship tale where these friends, you don't think that they should really be friends. I mean, they're so different from each other, but they get along so well and they complement each other so well. Short little chapters. They go to a carnival and Golly is going to win a prize and she's going to throw this ball and, well, you can read and see what happens. Yeah. The vendor at the carnival isn't too pleased with her. And Golly she is going to go to a talent show. Yes, and she sees this talent show and she is going to go on stage and she is going to just have the best talent and she is going to recite this poem, and she gets up and she sees all these people and all these people are looking at her, and that's kind of hard to do. And so she kind of freezes. And so they kind of get together, and both of them come up with a plan, and they have a really good solution to kind of overcoming what they've done, and show that friends can come through for each other in the end, which is really cute. And then just a quick plug for Cinderella Smith, The More the Merrier. This is the second book by Stephanie Barden. Cinderella gets her name because she loses her shoes all the time. It's a nickname. She's always losing a shoe. And so this continues her tale of her, it's very realistic with like the friendship problems that girls have when they're getting into early elementary school. You have some friends who are not always so nice, and she's learning how to be friends with the boys that are there and stuff like that. So all tied in with shoes in any certain way to tie in with her name, but just a really cute introduction into early chapters.
I can identify with lots of people that can't always find their shoes. So, so what do we got over there, TANVI?
So this is Melonhead and the Vigilicious Disaster by Katie Kelly. And this is, I think, the 5th Melonhead book now. And this is another short chapter book. It's probably good for like middle elementary school aged. And Melonhead books chronicle the adventures and misadventures of a boy named Adam Mellon, whose head is rather melon-shaped, so it's called Melonhead. And in this book, Melonhead is going into 5th grade. So it starts out with the last day of summer, and he and his friends are fretting over their new teacher, who they heard is just horrible, completely horrible. So they're nervous about that, and they get to school, and there's a new girl in a wheelchair. And to make things more interesting, his mother has decided that she is going to think of the most creative ways possible to introduce vegetables into Melonhead's diet. And so these are very realistic fiction. And they're fun for both boys and girls, but I think that they're particularly fun for boys because Melonhead very much thinks like a typical young boy does. So at one point, Melonhead invites his best friend Sam and the girl in the wheelchair, whose name is Pip, over to his house for dinner. And to his horror, his mother has made these vegetable creations. One is a yacht, one is a race car, and one is a unicorn. So she actually makes this vegetable meal that looks like a unicorn. Yeah, cool, except that Katie Kelly goes into great detail to talk about how absolutely vile these meals are. And they're just hard, they're hard. And she talks about all of the disgusting ingredients and how truly awful they are. So Melonhead's mother steps away from the meal, from the table for a minute, and the kids come together and decide that they are going to dispose of these awful meals. And it's a major plot point in the story, this disposal of the meals that go into a vent. And his mother comes back, and she is thrilled because they have finished their meal and they're raving about it, and she has decided that she's this genius now who's going to keep making these meals. So it's very much just the ups and downs of being a 5th grade student. They're absolutely hysterical. I mean, the dialogue is just, the banter back and forth between Melonhead and his friends and his parents is incredible. And it's really what makes the stories. There's one part where, I'm gonna read it really quick. So it's the last day of summer, and Melonhead and his friend are talking about all of the things that they did that day. So he writes, "Went to the aquarium in Commerce Building to look at the giant vine garoons. We expected them to be over 6 feet tall. Found out 6 inches is giant for a vine garoon. Here's how I'm like a vine garoon. We both have relatives in Florida. His are scorpions that live in the Everglades. Mine are grandparents who live in Boca Raton." So it's very like, just like little one-liners like that just make you laugh. And there's really cute pictures in they're not giant pictures that take up a lot of the page, but they're enough to kind of keep you going. Yeah. And the print is a little bit bigger, so they would be really great choices for reluctant readers.
Cool.
And hopefully she'll keep coming out with more because I absolutely love this series.
Well, I have a 5th grader that, a 5th grade story that isn't quite as funny. It's a lot more serious than that. So we have this young boy that his name is August, and he has been, he is born with some facial deformities. And because of all the surgeries that he's had, he hasn't gone to private or public school or private school. He's been homeschooled until that time. And so he is now, our book opens up that he's being enrolled in this private school and going to attend this school. And of course, because of these deformities, we all know what probably will happen. And so there's quite a bit of discussion and quite a bit of forming friendships and sympathy, empathy, love, friendship with parents and their strength of letting go and letting him go to school. And then there's a little, quite a bit of bullying that are going on in the relationships that you have in school. And then there's a fight, a big fight. And some people protect him that hadn't been really good friends to him or good stewards to him as classmates. And they find out that he's truly just like they are, you know, inside, and that he's got a heart and he's got feelings, and so do they. And
they all love Star Wars.
And they all love Star Wars.
That's like a big part of it.
And a big part of it.
Yeah.
Very well written. I really thought it was a Newbery contender, but unfortunately it didn't get, but it has won many awards, you know. And so very, this is a debut book for this particular author, and very well written.
Started really high, so you expect good things coming in the next book.
Yeah, I would hate to be this author, because, you know, but what I thought was really remarkable about it, in reading some of the reviews and things, was the heart-wrenching type of things, that there were parents that their child had the deformity, some of the same type of cranial deformities. And in here there's a part that the dad and August are talking about the hat that disappeared, that he used to wear this one helmet type of thing, and the father had thrown it away because he wanted to see his son, because he loved his son for the way he looked, not covered up. And so get a Kleenex. Or a whole box of Kleenexes. Wonder by Palacio. It's a good book.
Yeah. The other thing that I liked about that book was it made it more realistic, because there were different chapters from different perspectives.
True.
So you saw most of it through, mostly they call him Augie, through Augie's eyes, but then you also saw the chapter from, or a few chapters from his sister's perspective, and how hard it is to be a sibling of someone who needs extra care and attention. And to me that added like just a lot of depth to the story, and a lot of perspective in also his friend, and how his friend's differing feelings about him. So that, to me, that was one thing that made this book stand out.
Yeah, because one person's disability is not just the person with the disability that needs, it's also those that are standing beside them and with them. So an awesome book. Again, for all ages, I think, for young kids, you know, school age, 5th grade and older, but also parents to take a look at where we're at, and teachers.
Can I say one more thing about it? The last thing I want to say about it is that it's also like just a really fascinating, like quick, interesting read. Like it's really a page turner. Sometimes we have these books and we're like, important lessons, good themes, and this one is also like you want to know what happens.
Correct.
So well written in that way.
Yes.
Too.
So
I love that.
Do you want to take a couple here?
Sure. 3 Times Lucky was my very favorite book this year. I remember reading a review of it in the middle of the summer, and I was like, oh, that sounds kind of interesting. And then over Christmas break, I thought, I'm going to read something I really want to read. And I was not disappointed, which is great, because sometimes, you know, you read a book and your hopes are so high and then they crash. And then it did end up getting a Newbery Honor Award this year, too, so that was great. It is set in a small town in North Carolina called Tupelo Landing, and because it's such a small town, there's no cell phone towers, and they have a really small town feel, so it feels a bit historical, even though it's set in the present day. But I appreciated that. The main character, her name is Mo, that's short for Moses, because during a hurricane she was pulled out of the river. She had been sent down the river, and so she considers herself 3 times lucky, because she lived in the basket, and then the colonel took her out and took her in, and she's been living with the Colonel and Miss Lana, who are quirky people, and every now and then they feel like they need their space, so they leave town for a while, but the rule is 3 days. You have to call within 3 days. Well, things get tricky around Little Tupelo Landing one summer when Jesse turns up dead, and a detective comes in from the big city and starts asking questions. And these questions are making the Colonel uncomfortable. And so Mo decides that she's going to take matters into her own hands. She's going to solve this mystery, figure out, you know, how did Mr. Jesse die and who killed him? Because the last person that was seen with Mr. Jesse was her very good friend Dale. So there's lots of twists and turns, lots of very quirky characters. There's a little tiny bit of, not really romance. She's in love with Lavender, who's an 18-year-old stock car driver. And near the end of the story, a big storm comes in. And so that kind of ratchets up the tension, too, as to finding out who was this killer, why is this detective so interested in this murder, and why does the Colonel keep disappearing? So lots of fun characters and mystery and adventure. So I think it would also be a great read aloud, like with a family, because it has that, it's just a great, that kind of book. So 3 Times Lucky.
I know we each have more juvenile fiction, but unfortunately our time is going, and I know we have some nonfiction that we want to share. So I think, TANVI, I would love to hear about your little slimy, little green, wonderful snakes that are sliming, slithering places.
These 2 books actually are a great pairing, but I'll talk about snakes first. And what I love about this book is that it's actually, like several of his other books, called Nick Bishop Snakes. Like, it's so amazing that he gets to put his name in the title. And this book is just a regular nonfiction book about snakes, and there's plenty of facts in it about where snakes live and what they eat and how they hunt. But what makes this absolutely spectacular is the photographs of these snakes. I mean, they are just beautiful. And this is like some kind of real life dragon. Yeah, and who has ever even seen anything like that? I know I haven't.
And who wants to get that close enough to some of those to take those pictures?
This is one of my favorites. It's a snake swallowing an egg. And what is so cool about these photographs, snake yawning, is that they're very personal. You know, you feel like you're looking at these snakes who are just hanging out and doing snake things. You know, like this is just what they do in their lives. And the design of the book is also phenomenal. I mean, you have all of these different colored pages, and the text kind of highlights the main point on each page. And what makes this book extra special as well is the author's note in the back. So you actually learn about how Nick Bishop took these photographs. And he actually lived with the snakes. I mean, he had them in his house, living with them, and he photographed them in his house. And he got bitten by snakes, and he had to stay up late in order to take the photographs of them. So you can really feel the dedication that he put into it.
And that's why he has books that are named Dick books.
Yes, exactly. Yes, I mean, he earned it.
Yeah.
And then this book here, I'd like to share really quick. This is The Beetle Book by Steve Jenkins. And it does a similar thing where it just gives quick facts about beetles, but the artwork is completely different. And it's truly artwork. It's not photographs. It's collages. It's torn and cut paper that could rival, you know, Eric Carle and Leoline, like all of them. I mean, it's just so stunning. And so on each page, he just talks about a different characteristic of beetles. So there's battle beetles, beetle senses, what beetles eat, etc. But this book is truly art. I mean, that's what it is. And what I like about this one too is that it shows you the actual size in little silhouettes. And this one here is one of my favorites. It's just this really bizarre looking strange thing. And then some of them he shows in actual size. So this beetle is actually this big in real life. And what I think is so excellent about both of these books is that even though the facts are pretty simple, they're excellent jumping off points. like who really cares about beetles? But you actually want to know about beetles as soon as you open up this book. And so I actually found myself spending quite a bit of time Googling facts and photographs of beetles. Since there isn't photographs, I wanted to see what they look like. And he did a phenomenal job of recreating them in this artwork. So I imagine both of these books and similar books really inspiring a lot of future entomologists and, you know, scientists of all kinds, because they are, you know, even though there isn't so much fact, you really want to further explore.
So we have Nick Bishop and Jenkins, and I have David Macaulay too, that they have brought in his wonderful nonfiction, juvenile nonfiction, into an easy-to-read nonfiction. So not the fantastic artwork that he has in his other books, but the information that is in there. So just to add that with that.
A really great one.
Yeah, so wonderful books to take into that age group. We have some turtles, right?
Yes.
Yeah, wonderful.
So this book was the nonfiction book that really touched me the most this year. It's called Island, A Story of the Galapagos by Jason Chen, who's been doing really amazing, their hybrid picture book nonfiction narrative. He did Redwoods a couple years ago, I believe. And so basically the most beautiful thing about this book is the artwork. He follows an island in the Galapagos over several centuries, and he says specifically when the islands were created. And through this book, he tells the story of what Charles Darwin noticed when he visited the islands, was that the species were adapting themselves to the conditions on that island, and then the species, the animals were passing on those characteristics. And so you see how Darwin came up with his theory of the origin of species. And it's very specifically drawn, where he draws the, like these cormorants, their bodies got heavier and their legs got more powerful because they needed to swim faster to get food in this particular place. And so he'll draw them with the legs getting stronger and stronger. And here their wings are going to almost nothing. So he shows the progression that happened over many years, but in a way that you can see it here in the book. And what really is amazing about the book, in addition to just the information that you get, is the emotions that you can see on the animals' faces. And I think that's what makes it so amazing, is you can see these lizards, and their eyes are closed and they look kind of peaceful, sitting in the sun. And so there's just so much detail and beauty. And you see the beauty of our world in this book, so I appreciated that one.
Let's take a look at your other ones here. We've
sure,
got a job.
Sure, I have two other ones here that are about looking back into history and bringing a lens into a certain time in a certain place. So this is called We've Got a Job, the 1963 Birmingham Children's March. And we've had lots of books on the civil rights movement, but this one focuses on just 1 year in just the city of Birmingham, and follows specifically for pre-teenagers and teenagers, and as they reckon with the fact that their city is still segregated, even though federally law is segregation is not allowed. And it also it goes through a lot of the leaders of the civil rights movement at the time, and shares some of their perspectives and some of their conflicts and difficulties. And there was not always agreement about how to go about fighting the segregation. And one of the main focuses is they had a theory that they were going to pack the jails so that the police would just get so frustrated trying to enforce all these rules. And so they did marches to get people arrested. But it took a long time to figure out how they were going to do it and get people that were willing. And then in the end, they did have a lot of students that ended up being part of it. And that's one of the main focuses of this book.
Very powerful. Troubled time.
Yeah, and this one is similar. It's in that it's a specific time and place. It's the Beyond Courage by Doreen Rappaport, and it follows the untold story of the Jewish resistance during the Holocaust. So it really pulls stories that you might not have heard. Some of them are newly reported here, and also lots of pictures and newspapers and all of that. That's what really characteristic of our nonfiction today, that we can learn so much and see a lot of like you're really there. So.
I know, I want to plug it too. There's a lot of nonfiction, some that we don't have here today, that are fantastic from this past year, but you're going to be talking about them on the award-winning show. Yes. So if you, there are a bunch of other ones out there, but you're going to have to watch that.
And by no means is this, I don't even think we can say it's a sampling of our favorites. We definitely are under a time restraint and cannot share everything, as you can see with the leftovers on the table. But I think we should end on a lighter note. Don't you have some poetry books that you would like to share?
There were some wonderful poetry books that came out this year. Forget-Me-Nots, Poems to Learn by Heart. Mary Ann Hoberman selected these, and they are really short, really fun ones, meant to be ones that you can read and catch on to and learn very quickly, so that you can say them over and over again. I know I have a 11-month-old daughter at home, and so we've grabbed a couple of these and we repeat them every time we're changing her diaper and stuff like that, and just kind of like grabbing onto them and stuff. But all ages and all kinds of topics. Yes. You know, weather and flying things and animals and stuff like that. So it's a variety of just a really fun poems that have been pulled together. Just a plug for a couple other ones. This one is one of those cool format ones. The Arrow finds its mark. It's a book of found poems. And so people were given a charge. They had certain characteristics that they needed to go out and find poetry for. So some of them grabbed words that they found on Facebook, and others of them found a crossword puzzle, so they pulled words from the crossword puzzle that they found. Some people found receipts out of garbages, and so they created poems with the words found on the receipts and stuff like that. So it was just a really cool way of realizing that there's words and poetry all around you in life, and you can create anything from what's around you. And then this one I totally would like to end on. Twosome, especially with Valentine's Day coming up pretty soon. Super, super cute. Love poems from the animal kingdom. And they're just these little, cute little poems like earthworms and caterpillars. The earthworms say, "We're perfect together, I guarantee, that I dig you and you dig me." And caterpillars, "I'm finding a leaf, you're taking a bite. Wait a few weeks and our hearts will take flight."
Aww.
So it goes through, and there's all kinds of different animals, zebras and cats and dogs. Dogs, "Nice to meet ya. You smell delish. Want to share my water dish?" So just a really cute animal poetry book. I loved sharing it with teachers and friends that come in.
And it's nice to end on a kind of a lighter note than some of the serious nonfiction books that we've seen. I would like to end with a page out of our book, The Fantastic Flying Books of Mr. Morris Lesmore. "Sometimes Morris would become lost in a book and scarcely emerge for days." So let's hope that you can immerse yourself in a book and not come up for days too. But be sure and come to the library to get that book first. Until next time, happy reading.